Hello and welcome to the Reawakening the Women Within Weekend Summit, where I'm joined by an incredible lineup of women. So the background of this summit, this mini summit that we are hosting, is that we are celebrating the International Day of the Girl, which is coming up on October 11th. This was created by the United Nations in 2012 to celebrate the achievement and the potential of girls. So the day aims to highlight and to address the needs and challenges that girls face, and also to promote girls' empowerment and the fulfillment of their human rights. The day focuses on girls because of the disproportionate gender-based discrimination that girls face every single day. The theme for 2021 is Digital Generation, Our Generation. And I think this is, while we celebrate the girls and the women of tomorrow, we also wanted to bring in the women of today to talk about how they have navigated the digital generation. So really this summit is aimed at women of all ages who want to reawaken the girl within, because for too many reasons, women often grow up too fast. And there's a quote that I love that says, growing up, I've discovered, is like housework. It's never finished. And therefore, we invite you, women of all ages and all backgrounds, to join us for the Reawakening the Girl Within weekend. For this session, I'm joined by Lorraine Kuimba, and she is an incredible young woman. She is a legal and peace practitioner. She holds a master's degree in human rights, peace, and development. And so she is also the UN Women National Youth Gender Advocate for gender equality. Probably my favorite thing about her is that she's also my sister. So I am glad to welcome you and have you with me this afternoon. Hi, Lorraine.
Thank you. Hi. Like I always say, you make me sound so good, but well, I'll take it. How are you?
I am good. So it's been a couple of months since we've seen each other in Zimbabwe earlier this year. So I just thought it would be great to have you on. I know a number of people haven't met you, don't know about you, don't know how awesome you are really as a person. And so I thought it would be great to introduce you and let people know who you are, some of what you do, because I think you do have an incredible story. I think as we think about just this idea of women growing up too fast, the challenges that women face. In the earlier session, we talked with Nadine about some of the dangers that women have in terms of navigating online. And I think with your story, we were talking about some of the dangers that women face even offline. And so how can we protect and champion the rights of girls and women? So in this session, Lorraine will be talking about how she has fought for justice and accountability after facing different situations, and just how she has turned those painful situations into just a powerful story of transformation. She's used the internet to really spread her story, to share her story, and also has gotten involved in advocacy for gender equality and women's rights with her involvement in UN Women and other women's organizations that she's involved in. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Again, for the benefit of the people who are meeting you for the first time, you are calling in from Zimbabwe, from Harare, Zimbabwe, which is where we both grew up. So tell us a little bit about Lorraine, the girl within.
Okay, so it's like a little bit awkward, telling you about myself because you were basically my parent. But anyway, well, a young lady who just has I believe it's a story that's similar to a lot of people. But it's a story that I've chosen to talk about, to speak out, to help other people out there. Grew up in a family of three, grew up in a patriarchal society, which is very common in most parts of the world. particularly in Zimbabwe, it's really common. So it's like growing up seeing toxic masculinity happening, witnessing issues to do with gender-based violence. But like you're so young and you really don't understand what's going on. You're just like, I'm living through life, I'm cruising through life. And it goes back to the issue that you talked about growing up too soon. So it was growing up in that environment, growing up in that setup where I got to see a lot of things. Um, Little did I know it was shaping me to be what I am today. But yeah, so I went to high school, managed to go to college, went to college, and I did law and politics in South Africa, University of KwaZulu-Natal. And then after I came back home, when I was done with my degree, I came back home. And then I was at home and I'm thinking, what am I going to do? Because I'm trying to apply for jobs and it's not really the easiest of things to do. So I then decided to start on doing my master's with Africa University, which I went for heads on. But also at that time, I actually didn't know what I was doing. It was just one of those, okay, yeah, I'm trying to figure life out, but I need to progress. So I started school. And when I started school, I then became quite prominent or popular with the lecturers, which resulted in me getting selected for this amazing program. It's called the Internship Fellowship Program, which is under UN. And so then in their initiating us and all of that, it's like then they start asking us, so what are you interested in? And this was the time that I actually had to think about what it is that I was interested in, what it is that I wanted to do, because it would determine where I was going to be placed. It would determine the kind of work that I was going to be doing. So then for some reason, which I know, I ended up saying, no, I'm passionate about women's rights. I'm passionate about girls, young women and girls. So I'm passionate about advocating their rights. And then so my organization that I was affiliated to was UN Women, but I was placed at an organization called Women in Law in Southern Africa. And I was there for a little bit over a year. And that's where I was doing, well, actually, yeah, well, I'll go, I think I got a bit ahead of myself, but I'll go back to that. But yeah, at Women in Law in Southern Africa, I was doing women's rights advocacy, I was doing research, I was doing legal justice for women, considering there's a huge gap as in terms of women knowing their legal rights, but also coming in to claim their legal rights. So that was mostly the work that I was doing. But before I went to Women in Law in Southern Africa, I was placed at the Zimbabwe Gender Commission, which is also entirely responsible for advancing in gender equality. So yeah, I then left the Gender Commission and I joined Women in Law in Southern Africa, which was an amazing experience, but it also just shaped me and kind of put me in the path where I am right now, where I advocate for women and girls' rights. I still aim to do that, more of it. And I've worked with amazing people, amazing organizations that are still advancing for um, women, young women and girls' rights.
That's fantastic. Thanks for sharing that with us. So I wonder where did the desire for justice come from? So that seems to be a theme. So as you said, when you were asked, like in that moment of what is it that you want to focus on, this came from somewhere. Is that something that you've given thought as to where that came from? This desire for justice and standing up for women and their rights.
Yeah, like I said, it's something that I've grown to understand. I've grown to like really say, okay, this is the reason. Because at that time, I really didn't think about it, to be honest. But now, as I have lived through life, as I've gone through interviews and all of that, I have had to go back to that moment and think about why is it that I started doing this. And to be honest, it's because of my background growing up. As I mentioned, I grew up in a patriarchal society, so I witnessed quite a lot. I grew up seeing or witnessing gender-based violence. I grew up in situations where inequality was so normalized. So I think deep down it was right in there. Like, I'm not okay with seeing this. I'm not okay with experiencing this, but I'm not okay also with having someone else experience it. And so that was, well, I think from the age of 6, funny enough, when I was witnessing all of these things, and even as I was growing up, I remember even I had a conversation with someone, and I was like, wow, this is where I started actually speaking out for people, was when I was in high school. It's weird, but I was actually bullied emotionally, and it was a group of people who were bullying us, and out of all the people, I was the only person who actually stood up, and I was like, no, this has to stop. And I went to my principal and I was like, listen, this is what's been happening. And after that, a lot of people actually started sharing their experiences of the things that they went through. So it was like, it kept on building up. And then also then my own experiences after high school, after college. I think it is common that 1 in every 3 women actually face some sort of gender-based violence, some sort of inequality based on their gender. So it's like I'm one of the 3 women. I'm one of 3 women in different setups. So I experienced that, and then that channeled me to like, okay, you know what, this is what I actually want to do. But I think it was more amplified with my experience at the Gender Commission, which I will dive into and probably talk about that, where I was sexually harassed. And it was a weird thing. It was a weird setup because I'm in an environment where I think I want to be, well, I think we are in this together. And I remember at that time we are actually doing public lectures on sexual harassment, going into schools, going into different institutions, handling cases that were coming in on that. So it was like, okay, this is weird because I'm in a setup where we're fighting against it, but then I'm experiencing it. I'm sexually harassed within these premises, within these offices. So it just didn't make sense for me. But after experiencing that, it was quite bad. I went through a phase, it was quite bad. I was diagnosed with depression. I went through counseling, thankfully, but it's not everyone who gets such an opportunity. So I went through counseling, and um, after going through those sessions, those therapy sessions, that's when I realized, no, you know what, I need to stand up because, funny enough, the perpetrator had done it to another girl who was before me, who had come in before me, and I was thinking, how many other girls has he done this to, or how many other girls have experienced, or how many other women have experienced such, and within these premises, but also in any other organization or with any other men that are of power. So from there, I was like, you know what, this is the time that I need to speak up. It was hard for me to get to a point where I could actually share my story, but I was like, if it's going to take some kind of pain for me to actually um, speak out and relate to what other women are going through, then I'll take it, I'll do it. And that's how I actually started on this journey.
I think you've given us quite a bit to unpack just in the opening minutes, and I think the rest of the session I'd like to explore your journey in terms of what you went through, as you said, being in this environment where you think that it is a safe space, working for the Gender Commission, and you think, this is the place where people are on board who are championing women's rights, who are protecting women, and to have that safe space be taken away in such a terrible way. And then, as you said, there is an emotional aftermath that happens. And oftentimes people are afraid to not just to share what has happened with them, but also to share the effects of it, the consequences of it on their emotions, on their mindset, and all of that. So I'm looking forward to hearing how you have walked through that, and what you can maybe what you've learned that you can share with other people on their journey of transforming pain into power. But before that, I'd like to take a couple of steps back and talk about so you were studying law, right? And then when you went back to Zimbabwe, you mentioned that you weren't able to get a job. And just to give some context to people who are unfamiliar with Zimbabwe, is because I think right now what we are famous for is our late president, Robert Mugabe, and a number of memes and jokes that are shared about him. And then we're also famous for their incredible like million and like $1 billion notes that are circulating around the world due to hyperinflation. And so I just wanted to just kind of add some of that context that in a sense you've been able to find your way forward even in the midst of what is a really difficult environment to navigate in. So I think it was in 2000, 2007, if I'm not mistaken, was when the Zimbabwean economy officially collapsed, and overnight families lost their income, they lost the money in the bank. Students who were studying abroad had to return home, and it was pretty much the beginning of the collapse of financial institutions, social institutions, and a number of international organizations left the country. Large companies, large corporations, a lot of like the basically wherever you could find work or employment, a lot of that was taken away. And so I know that you've grown up in this generation of people who had hopes and dreams of, having a career, being able to establish yourself, and then along the way having that dream robbed from you. So I'd just like you to maybe start with there, just talking about how were you able to maybe navigate that, just that experience of turning that pain into power, to be able to end up just studying and to then find yourself where you are today?
Yeah, to be honest, it was tough. Because I remember even in my final year when I was in college, I actually got into depression because when I was in South Africa, I was trying to get a job. And it was like, I'm being told the only kind of jobs you probably can get right now is like their admin jobs and all of that. And I was applying for jobs and I couldn't get them, which is the reason why I actually came back home at that time. And I'm like, okay, let me go back home and try to regroup. But then coming back home, it's like you're looking at the situation, like you're saying, like trying to figure out, I don't have a job, so what's next? And you have all these goals that are set up for you, like by 25, I should be doing this, by 20, whatever, I should be doing this. And so it was really a tough space to be in. I don't want to lie.
Yeah,
And so it
and
was
maybe
like,
also for people who don't know, I think the unemployment rate in Zimbabwe is around 80+%. So I think when we talk about unemployment in other parts of the world, if it's like 10%, 20%, then people are already freaking out. But this is an environment where you're at 80% unemployment.
yeah, I would put it at like 93 official, unofficially. But then it does feel like, because now it's like everyone is doing something to just get them like food, like $1 a day for them to actually get food on their table. So it was really tough. I was privileged enough to have, not have to worry about those things. But then at the end of the day, you're like, I'm growing. Where am I going? Which direction am I taking? Because the idea of the life that I had of after I'm done with college, and then the reality of it afterwards was just, yeah, I got into depression at some point, and then I was like, you know what? I'm going to have to take action for this. So at that time, I'll be honest with you, for me, it was like, okay, I'm just gonna do a master's because I don't have anything else to do. And I was also privileged enough to have a family that was supporting me. My father, our father, was supporting me, and he like, yeah, he supported the dream. I went into college. And so as I was in college, it was uh, an opportunity to network, really, because then I met different people. I met different people who were working in different organizations because at that time, masters was not done by like a lot of people. So it's like the people who were starting to do their master's degree, people who were professional, people who were working already. So it was an opportunity to be networking. I met people from Safavids, I met people from Facts, met people from like just different paths. And then also my lecturers. So then it was gaining prominence with the lecturers, being the class rep. So every communication has to be done through the class representative. And so I was told about this opportunity, the internship fellowship program. And I was like, well, I'm interested, but hardly is it for especially people our generation in our position who are trying to get a job. People hardly jump at the opportunity of being an intern because it's like, no, I'm a professional. Like I have everything that I need, or I am qualified enough to not be an intern. So I was like, you know what? I'm grabbing this opportunity by the horns and I'm gonna run with it. So that evolved from the pain of being depressed and in the pain of thinking of I'm not gonna get paid, and chose to see the bigger picture of it. Like, okay, this is the UN. What opportunities is it going to create for me to actually be part of this? So then it was like, I'm grabbing this by the horn. It is painful. I'm not getting enough money as I thought I would get, but I'm gonna run with it. I'm gonna um ride along with it, and I'm just gonna leave and do what needs to be done. And so from that, it was like more opportunities opened up for me because I did what I did with my whole heart. I grew passionate about it as well. And so then I then started being recognized for the work that I was doing. And one good example is then I became chosen to be one of the 5 national youth gender advocates for UN women because I was kind of like really involved in running with it. Also a volunteer position, but also it was just a matter of I really enjoy this work that I'm doing. I really enjoy doing advocacy. So it was, yeah, looking beyond the pain of not being able to like earn a living, if I could say that, but choosing the bigger picture of I'm fighting a good cause. I'm doing something that is good, so I'm gonna run with it. So
That's fantastic. So I love that you almost talk about zooming out to see the big picture, that sometimes when you focus on the things that are painful, the things that aren't working, then it's very easy to lose perspective. But when we are able to zoom out and to see the bigger picture, that even though you may not be where you want to be right now, just taking the next step can open up doors in future that maybe other people might not even recognize that opportunity as an opportunity. It might seem like a waste of time, but for you, being able to take that next step is really what opened up the doors for you to then be able to explore and to discover the things that made you come alive, right? And I think sometimes when we haven't yet connected with that, when we haven't yet found that, it's harder, right, to see outside of that box. But I think when you take the next step, as opportunities open up, then it creates a lot more clarity with regards to what the next step will be. So I think really the key sounds like to keep moving, that even though it's painful, even though it's difficult, keep moving, keep putting yourself out there, get support from the right people if you're able to, and then be able to navigate with the resources that you have. You might not have what everyone else has. Your situation might be extremely unique, extremely different and difficult. But I think at the same time, I think it's really just take the next step, whatever the next step looks like for you. And that's really how you begin to create this pathway where, one day you can look back and kind of begin to see that tapestry coming together. So, so as you said, then you started doing your master's degree, the networking as well. Sounds like it was one of the keys, and being chosen for this program and ending up in the Gender Commission. Could you tell us a bit about what you were doing in the Gender Commission, and what is the true role of the organization?
Okay, so first of all, I wasn't there for long enough for me to say I actually did a lot. But the work that I was doing was I was part of the legal and investigations department. Um, so there would be cases, people would report their different cases where and I think the time that I was there, what was most prominent was issues to do with sexual harassment, because there was one very famous case that had come in earlier on. So it had actually opened doors for other people to really talk about their experiences and what they were going through. So it was us handling cases that were coming in. We had walk-ins come in. We had people writing in letters that we needed to respond to. And then so after they reported their case, then we would launch investigations to see what was going on, and then also just do a publication and advise on the different arms of the government, especially on what needed to be done. And also, and it wasn't just cases of sexual harassment, there were other cases that were in the most remote of areas where you're like, really, is this really happening? Where to do with um child marriages in different communities, but also in religious sectors that were there. So that was the role that I was playing or contributing to. And so also bringing in the legal aspect of um, how does the law apply, or what improvements can we bring in terms of the law in trying to protect women that are going through these issues. And then there are also issues to do with part of the roles of the Gender Commission, where women empowerment, women participation in political sectors, yeah, just basically women empowerment. That was the real main goal. And the Gender Commission is one of the commissions that were instituted in terms of trying to advance for Beijing 25 in Zimbabwe, where we're aiming for gender equality. So it was one of the institutions that were brought in. And to be honest, on paper, it is really, really good. The initiative, or what the aim is really, really good, because there needs to be that balance where the government or where the state is getting this support or this advice from an independent commission, along with other commissions like the Human Rights Commission. So those are the roles that it is supposed to be playing. But yeah, as to the amount of work that has been done, to be honest, I think there's a lot of things that need to be done, because we have a good structure on paper, but when it comes to implementation, I think it's a challenge that a lot of organizations, a lot of departments, a lot of even states in Africa are facing. I talk about Africa because this is the context where I'm at. I'm not sure about everywhere else, but this is quite a huge thing, which has also been, I think, noticed that as Africa, we are advancing in terms of what's written on paper, but when it comes to implementation, we still have a very, very long way to go. And I think it can be attributed to us being tied to social norms, social practices, things that we are familiar with and that we haven't broken away from. So, yeah, it is a good commission. It is good on paper, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of implementation.
I think, as you said, I think that's a challenge that's true across countries, across industries, where as as we are working on creating the structure, and then being able to translate that into training, making sure people on the ground are actually doing and implementing and executing. And I think that's part of maybe what led to the incident that you had with sexual harassment while working for the Gender Commission. I think it's actually quite a shocking thing, right? When you're talking about you are in the process of dealing and addressing the complaints that are coming in, and then to be faced with that within your own office, among your own colleagues, I think is certainly inappropriate, and also unacceptable. And I think that's really where I think we need to understand that change needs to happen at multiple levels of society. We can't just leave it to these big organizations to come and save us, or to come and make the changes that we need, because even within those organizations, I think the change needs to start happening at home. The change needs to start happening within each of us, so that it can translate into the culture and the society, because the people who are working in these organizations are products of the culture, products of the society. And of course, one could argue there, needs to be much more stringent, criteria and qualifications in terms of the people that we allow into these places that ought to be advancing women's interests and women's rights. And so you also mentioned that this man had also seemed to have been doing it consistently. That even the person who had been there before you had been through the same experience.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe let me just give a bit of more detail to what happened. So when I joined the Gender Commission, as I mentioned, it was more on an internship level. So there were times where, for example, the receptionist wasn't in, so you would be asked to stand in for the receptionist. So I remember I met him when I was by the reception. Like that was the time that I actually interacted with him, because at that time he was the vice chairperson of the Gender Commission. So our paths hardly crossed. But the only thing is, on this day, the reception was on the wing that his office was. My office was in a different wing. So yes, we met on I got to interact with him by the reception. And I remember there was an office assistant and I think two other interns that were there. And yeah, the introductions were done. Just have conversation because it's a work setup. So you're expected, to work together. And so it was just a work conversation. Oh, okay, so what have you studied? Okay, that's good and whatnot, right? So, well, that was the, I think that's all I remember actually, the conversation that I had with him, or actually knowing him. And then later on, I went for a trip because there was a workshop that we were attending in a different city in Chennai. So after I came back, the office assistant says to me, the VC was looking for you. And I'm like, okay. Um, that is weird because I've never like really like why is he looking for me, right? And then I'm like, okay, fine, I'll see him. Then I forgot about it totally. And then I saw him another day. And he's like, I called you to my office and he didn't come. And I'm like, oh, yeah, by the way. So I actually made time to go to his office because I didn't know what it was about. I went there, saw the receptionist. No, sorry, saw his PA, his personal assistant. Was like, okay, sure, you can go in, right? And then he called his PA as well, and he's like, no, I realized she's good at doing this receptionist thing. So I was thinking when you're not in, you can call her to come in and stand for you when need be. I'll be okay with that. So I'm like, okay, it's fine. So the PA and the office assistant start telling me, no, he's really a good guy, he's really a good man. And so the PA then told me about this girl. He's like, listen, this guy is a very good man. He can even offer to pay for your fees. He's just that person who's very supportive. And I'm thinking this is a father figure, because he's like, seems like really a good guy, seems like really a good man. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And it's like, yeah, and he hardly interacts with people. So it's like, yeah, it's good that he has noted your hard work or the good work that you're doing. And I'm like, oh, okay. So she told me about this girl. She's like, there was a case where she ended up reporting falsely about her being sexually harassed because she had been selling some products that he refused to pay for, and now she wanted to create a story. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting, right? And so I remember on the day that I was actually harassed, um, he said to me, I want to take care of you and whatnot, whatnot. And I'm like, yeah, okay, this is a bit off, you know. But I'm like, okay, trying to keep my cool, trying to be professional, you know. I'm like, oh no, I really appreciate the work that the Gender Commission is doing. I'm trying to take care of us, the employees, you know. And so he's like, yeah, I don't want you to go around saying we weren't taking care of you, you know. And the funny thing is, the office assistant was there when he was saying all of these things. And then the next thing he tells me, um, please don't go and report it as sexual harassment because you will destroy my reputation. So I'm like, okay, what is going on, you know, type of thing. So then I then revisited everything, all the conversations that I had with the PA, all the conversations that I had with the office assistant, and I realized actually, wait, this girl was actually sexually harassed, but then the the case was not they didn't go ahead with the investigations and everything because they covered it up and said she just wanted to sell her products and he hadn't paid for them, and or she was demanding for more money and all of that.
Mm.
So I wanted to reach out to her, but I wasn't sure how she was going to feel about it. But yeah, so I figured, yeah, she actually was, but no one was willing to listen, or if they did listen, there was a good cover up because of the um, issue of power and all of that.
Yeah, and I think for the sake of the people who may be listening in, I think there are details that I know you haven't gone into with regards to some of the interactions and some of the actions by this perpetrator, and I think I don't want to give him, you know, too much airtime in terms of talking about him and some of the things that he did and what actually led you to kind of the peak of everything that happened that led you to go and report and then investigate what happened. And I think a lot of times we hear these kinds of stories and we start blaming the victim. We start wondering, what did she do wrong, right? Like we almost want to get into the nitty gritty of the details so that, you know, externally we can judge, you know, was that really what happened? And I think it's a mindset and a culture that needs to shift in terms of respecting boundaries, respecting that when people's boundaries are violated, especially by people in places of power, right? We have, you know, Me Too and all of those things that it's actually uh, important for us to, I think, create a safe space for people to step up and to share their story. So I appreciate that you have gone up and shared your story. And as you said, creating a door and an avenue for conversations, important conversations like this to happen. So I do want to celebrate and applaud you because it is what we are talking about, right? Growing up, being strong and being safe, being able to recognize when those boundaries have been pushed, and when to push back, when to speak up. And so I know then you ended up going into the legal system. So what was your experience there as you were seeking justice in the aftermath of everything that had happened?
Okay, maybe I want to just go back a bit on like what you talked about, how the victim is then victimized again, like you are blamed for all of this. I actually went
Mm,
through that phase where I also questioned myself, like, what did I do? I I tried to remember every time, what was I wearing on that day? What had I said? What did I do? All of those things, I thought about them because I'm thinking, what is wrong with me at the end of the day? So it does something to you, but then you have other people to come in and be asking you, what happened? How did you get into this position? And I remember at that time, it's a funny story, but then I remember at that time I was dating a guy who then literally just distanced himself after I told him this is what had happened. And I kind of figured that in his head it was like, so you're probably in a relationship with this man. And I'm thinking how disgusting it is for me to be in a relationship with a man who's old enough to be my grandfather. And that's the truth of the matter. Um, so it's like I went through that phase, and thank goodness I had therapy that helped me to, move away from that. Because I remember after that, I had panic attacks whenever I passed through the road to that office. I remember I had, um, a panic attack when I was asked to go there to see the CEO, because the CEO asked me to come in and talk to her. Because the day that I was harassed, for people who don't know, I had come in because he had asked me to go buy food for him with his card during lunch. When I came back and I was giving it back to him, he walked up to me and he hugged me forcefully and started kissing me. And so I walked out of the place. I didn't tell anyone. I reported to my superior in UN Women. That's where I went. And I was like, please deal with this, because I didn't know who to turn to. I didn't know who to run to, because I'm thinking this is the Gender Commission. I'm supposed to feel safe, but I wasn't feeling safe at all at that point. So I had to go to someone who was out of the office. So then I remember when I went to the CEO to then talk about my story and talk to her, she's like, oh, yeah, I've heard reports that this is not the first time that it's happening. And I remember sitting in the office and thinking, so what have you done about it? Because I'm not the first person. You heard reports. Did you investigate on it? You didn't, clearly, right? And then she said to me, now I realize that more work needs to be done about it so that we do away with it. And but then for me, I really felt offended. I won't lie to you, because number one, I'm thinking, you've let this go, you've let this happen, and you didn't take action on it. Secondly, you're asking me, because she asked me to come back and work there. I'm like, secondly, you have no idea how hard it was for me to come back into this environment, how I had a panic attack, how I couldn't breathe when I was there because I kept on thinking it was going to happen again. Right. So I was offended that she asked me to come back and work in this organization where I did not feel safe at all. And I remember after that, even months later, I was filled with so much anger. I even wrote an email to her and the chairperson. I'm like, listen, if these were your daughters, how would you feel? Would you have done something else? But I never got a response. It was never taken up. I was told we were going to do investigations. Nothing of that sort was done. He was still protected, but at the end of the day, it's more or less I was forgotten about, because he was protected. He was told, no, you resign silently, forcefully, but silently. And all they said was he resigned and he left, and no one knew what had happened. So it was more like, to me, again, it went back to the issue of, what about me? Right, at the end of the day. And I'm also questioning, so what did you think? Did you think I was in a relationship with him, or all of that? So yeah, that's on the issue of being victimized. And I don't know if you have any follow-up questions on that, or should I move on to the question that you had asked about my experience?
Yeah.
Okay, so my experience in the legal sector with women and law in Southern Africa, and it was actually amazing. I loved doing it. So basically, what I was doing, I was dealing with mostly victims and survivors of gender-based violence, um, because there's a realization that there's a huge gap when it comes to women who claim their legal rights. Firstly, because they don't know what their legal rights are. Secondly,
Mm,
because they do not have the capacity to actually claim those legal rights. So you have women who have abusive husbands, even girls who are in abusive relationships, where you hear crazy stories of how a man would come and is harassing this woman, telling her, I need to come into the house or whatever, or even just relatives. To be honest, and it's crazy, like I'm saying, it is crazy. You hear different stories that are crazy. So it was an amazing experience because I'm like, I get to help this woman. I get to explain to them what the law is, how they can secure a protection order, how what they do after that protection order against the perpetrator has been violated. So after getting the protection order, the perpetrator is instructed not to come close to the person, or is instructed to stop using abusive words or stop whatever abusive behavior that they have been engaging in. And then after that, if they continue to go on with that, then they are found to be guilty of being in contempt of court, and they can be arrested, and the sentence can be 5 years. But again, we still have a huge gap when it comes to implementation. We've had different reports from women who actually say, listen, I I got him arrested, but the next thing he was friends with the police officer and he was out, And so there's that gap of, or there's that lack of prioritization of such cases of, you know, this is what this woman is going through, this is what this child is going through, in terms of GBV. But I also enjoyed the experience of, because I was also handling divorce cases, issues to do with, so when it comes to divorce, it was a bit complicated for women. It still is, because they think, I can't walk away from this marriage because I have so much to lose. And for sure, in so many instances, the woman is left with nothing, or she back then the law was, you take what's in the kitchen because that's what's yours, and everything else does not matter. What you bought that is in the bedroom, what you bought that is in the lounge, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Even if you put your money into the house, building the house that you are staying in, it doesn't matter. So back then they would leave with the property, with the kitchen utensils. That's all they were allowed to leave with. So then this women in law in Southern Africa was coming in to cover that bridge, to build that bridge, to say, okay, it should not be like that. So we're also doing that, handling divorce cases, but allowing or creating a space where women would actually get something from these divorces, or walk away and feel free to walk away, and not just be tied to abusive relationships for the sake of fear of losing whatever it is that they would have built. And then we were also dealing with issues to do with estate and property, because it is a patriarchal society. When it comes to real estate, when it comes to estate issues, usually it's the property is left for the man, or the man in the house, or the boy in the house, and then women are losing out on whatever the inheritances that their parents or relatives would have left. So there were also those issues. I loved it. That was my experience. I loved it because I felt like I'm helping a woman to know what her right is, a woman to fight for what's right, for that right. Um, yeah. So that was pretty much it. That was pretty much my experience there.
Thank you. I think that is such important work, especially as I think it's really creating that awareness that you knew where to go. You knew that there were avenues for you to follow. And I think then being able to help other women to explore that, to find their path forward. So let's say, if you were to meet someone who needs to confront some things that they've been through, and they want to find healing in their past, so they can move forward. What would you say?
I would say the first thing is, listen, you need to feel it. Um, it is going to be painful. but you need to feel it. You need to go through it because there's this notion of be strong that comes, like everyone says, be strong, you're gonna be fine. And so in trying to be strong, you actually you don't face it, you don't deal with that particular issue. So I would say you need to feel it first, heal from it, and then you start embrace it and say, you know what, this is the pain that I have. But after feeling it, I'd say don't stay there. Don't stay a victim. Don't stay in the pain that you've experienced that you've experienced. Because for me, it was okay, I've gone through this. What can I do to help the next person? What can I do about the pain that I felt? Because I'm like, I went through this, I know how horrible it feels. So at the end of the day, I'm gonna help someone else to come out of the situation. For someone who is going through or has gone through it, confront it within you, confront it and say, this is what happened to me. Feel it, understand the pain that you went through, understand all the emotions that you went through after going through that experience. And then you start off. That's where you're going to start off. But you have to make a conscious decision that I'm not going to stay here. I'm not going to let this define me. I'm not going to let the pain define me. But even if it's going to define me, it's going to define me as a hero who got up after I had been kicked and I was down.
Well said. Very, very powerful words. Where did you get this from? How did you learn this? Who were some of your influences, your role models, your mentors?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, it has taken me time to actually think this through as I've been going through this journey because I'm like yeah, I'm not sure that is too natural. But anyway, um one person that I would put on the top is my mom, our late mom. She was a champion. She fought different injustices. She fought, I mean, you know her story. She was a victim of gender-based violence. But I believe also that the things that came with just the society at large, the expectations that were on her, that were placed on her, she had to fight through those. And she was a very, very vocal person. She would actually take a stand and be like, no, I'm not doing this. I do not deserve this. I'm not supposed to be doing this. And she would move. So I got it from her. I don't know if it's just the genes or um, because of the conversations and the friendship that I built with her, but also from that. Um, and I think you can attest to that because you're also in there fighting the cause that we took it from our mom. But also, when I look at you, I think I mentioned earlier on that it is weird for me to actually talk to you about me because you're basically my parent. You parented me even as I was growing up. But so it's like seeing you as well, the work that you're doing, what you're advancing for. And I think what really kickstarted my journey was when you came to Zim the other time and you had met with Majita's mom and you were talking, we ended up having that conversation about how girls in airports abandoned and turned into child prostitutes and all of that. And it was that conversation that made me realize there's work that needs to be done. So there's you as well. And then I think whenever I hear a story of any woman who's fighting the cause, one woman also who stands out for me is Nyaratai Gubundanda. She's a good AU Goodwill ambassador, and she's amazing. She's doing amazing work um, in the rural community. She's amazing. I look up to her. I look up to the work that she's done and the level she has gotten herself to actually speak um, about the injustices that are happening, especially for young women and girls. And I also have Maureen Shonge. She is part of UN Women. She's now based in Kenya, but she was my immediate. She was the person I ran to when my sexual harassment incident happened. But she has gone up the ranks, and she has shared the story with me of how she started. She's like, I literally started like you. I was working with the human rights, no, the NGO forum, I think. And she's like, I kind of just took it out from there. It is her dedication. She'll tell you the same way that I have baggy eyes. She'll tell you that, listen, I'm not sleeping because I need to get this done. And so I look up to her a lot. And so, yeah, those are just a few of the people that I look up to. But any woman who's standing and who's advocating for women's rights, advocating for girls' protection, for me, they stand as a mentor, they stand as a role model for me.
That's fantastic. I did joke earlier about, mentioning me as your role model, but thank you. I do appreciate that. And I think we have this energy that feeds off each other. As you mentioned, with the lady that you mentioned. So when I was in Zimbabwe a few years ago, we met her, and she was doing incredible work in Epworth, working with child-headed families, and I think that's kind of become one of the things that's kind of on my mind in terms of like, what can we do, how can we support, and so even in over Christmas, like we actually did a project with her. So I'll share some of those photos. And so we actually were able to help some of these child-headed families. And so again, I'm just glad that out of that conversation, I think both of us came away with a heightened sense of that passion and that desire to go out and do something more in the world. So what what does I guess as we come to a close, I think we've covered quite a lot of ground. And I think, as you've said, really the pathway to turn your pain into power is to start by acknowledging what's happening, being able to recognize when something has happened that is painful, that is difficult, then being able to feel it, to confront it, to actually address it, to not, because I think oftentimes we go into denial. And in the previous conversation with Nadine, it's because often we take responsibility, we question what did we do to deserve this. But I think again, it's really recognizing that not to re-victimize ourselves, but instead to acknowledge and then find a place of healing, because you can't heal what you haven't faced and addressed. So to really take that time to really bring it up, face it, get healing, get support, have someone to work with you through it. And then from there, then you find, I love what you said about how it defines you, and then you get to decide how will I weave this into my narrative, how will I make this part of my story, right? I decide, do I use it to fuel me? How can I use it to have more empathy for others? How can I step up and speak out? And the expressions will be very different for people depending on who they are, what their strengths are, and their situation and their context. You don't necessarily have to go out and speak about it, but it's important that you integrate it in a way that makes sense, and that to position yourself from that place of power. And you can't do that if you haven't healed, if you haven't addressed it, if you haven't confronted it. And so I think as you follow that pathway, then you will be able to stand tall, and to be able to really own your story, and to design your destiny, which is what I'm passionate about as I work with women. So, Lorraine, as we close, I'd like to find out like what's your key message, right? We're talking about reawakening the girl within. What message would you want to leave women with?
So I think it's a message to me as well. Um, Even listening from the last session that you had, it's a matter of going back, revisiting yourself, finding out who you are, finding out why you do things that you do. Um, because if I'm to use me as an example, um, I think the the sexual harassment was like more of it just blew out of proportion. It was my time where I'm like, you know what, I've had it. But then now, as I am going through all of this, it's going back, revisiting why do I do the things that I do? Why am I the way that I am? You know, what is it that I need to heal from? What is it that I can use to strengthen myself? So it's a matter of reawakening the girl that is within, the girl that was damaged, the girl that went through several things, but turning that and using it to bring out something that is powerful. So to anyone, I would say revisit that girl who had high hopes, that girl who had high dreams, that girl who thought I'm gonna be this and that. It is never ever too late to start over, to actually just be like that girl and embrace your power, embrace your weaknesses as well, because those are good enough. Because the moment that you realize that this is my weakness, you try to, or you aim to actually be like, okay, how could I turn this into a point of strength, a point of power? Embrace it, embrace who you are, love yourself, and just live life the way that you say you want to, especially as a young girl, the young girl that is within you.
So, as you reawaken the girl within you, what does the future look like for Lorraine?
My future looks too bright. um, to be honest, I want to be very as honest and as transparent as I can be. I'm still trying to figure out things, a lot of things. Like I said, I'm still on a path of healing. Healing from even the childhood traumas that I didn't even know I had. I'm healing from that. Um, but also it's a matter of, listen, I went through this for a reason, and my reason, I'll continue holding it to that. My reason is that I need to change someone else's life. I need to make sure someone else doesn't go through the same thing. And for now, I am working with the amazing Imelda Viri. She's going to be joining you in your next session. She has an organization, an upcoming organization called the Invaluable Woman. Um, Exile community, and I'm working with her, and I'm just loving the work that she's doing there. She focuses on health, she focuses on wellness, and we have a conference coming up in November. So for now, that is what I'm doing, but my bigger picture at the end of the day is to actually advance and grow the organization that I started along with you, Laura, called Wandering Heart, where we are just aiming to do more advocacy, advancement of young women and girls' rights, create equal opportunities for them, get them to be self-sustainable, and all of that. That is a bigger picture. But for now, it's me going through healing. For now, it's me learning from amazing women, phenomenal leaders that I'm coming across in different platforms like this one, UN Women, and any other platform. Yeah.
Sounds absolutely exciting. So, where can people find you, connect with you, contact you?
Well, I think if we're going to be using this platform, I'd say Facebook is amazing. You can get me on Facebook, Lorraine Kuimba, just inbox me, DM me. I'm even on Instagram. If you want my personal number, you can always send me a message and I can send it through to you on Facebook or on Instagram, whatever it is. I'm gonna be there because I'm doing also a lot of work on social media and the digital world. So you just let me know. And I think I want to say, do not hesitate to reach out to me. I remember after sharing my story of sexual harassment, I had a lot of people just coming in to say, you know what, I went through the same thing. Thank you so much for speaking up. And then there are other people who are like, tell me, help me out. How do I deal with this? How do I deal with that? So please don't hesitate to reach me out if you feel like you want to support the work that I'm doing, the work that I'm doing with Imelda, the work that I'm going to do in my own organization. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Oh yes, and you can also reach out to me on email at rainkuimba@gmail.com. So RAINE Kuimba Kuimba@gmail.com. Yes.
Fantastic. I think it really is amazing and inspiring. So I know you say, I make you sound like a hero, but it really is. I think, given our journey, our history, and where we are today, I think for me it is incredible. Yeah, to see us both, and to be able to work together and partner. That is very exciting. So thank you so much for joining me on this session. So we have gone a little bit long, but I think it's just been really valuable to, I think it's such a delicate conversation. I think it's something that we need to learn to give time and space to really allow. It's almost like the journey of healing sometimes takes longer than we expect. Sometimes we need more conversations around it than we think. Sometimes we need more healing than we think. And so I think it's important to allow the space for those things to happen. So thank you so much for joining me for this conversation with Reawaken the Girl Within Summit, hosted by Women in Leadership Limelight. So I'll just love to hear your thoughts on charting the way forward for women in leadership.
Okay. First of all, thank you so much for having me and having me share my story, as long as it is. Um, but I think for women in leadership, it's a matter of let's pull each other up even as we rise. Let's help each other up, because the women that are in leadership, most of the times, I don't know if it happens everywhere, but in our context, in Zimbabwean context, it's usually hard for a woman rather, to pull up someone even as they rise. So I love the idea of Mel Daviri. She's doing a Pull as I Rise mentorship program. I think for women in leadership, it's something that needs to be done. Help others grow, grow with other people around you. We'll do so much more work, impact more lives if we're going to be doing it together.
Thank you. I do believe we are better together. And thank you for the shout out for Imelda Viriri. So she will be coming up in the next session, and we will be talking about mentorship and how you can unleash your power. So thank you very much, Lorraine. And I look forward to having you back with us again in future on Women in Leadership Limelight. Women in Leadership Limelight is a platform that celebrates the stories and shares insights to help ambitious women leaders to grow, to heal, to flourish and grow, leading them and their teams from personal mastery to living a powerful legacy. So we support them through sharing leadership insights, through events like this, because leadership doesn't start at the top. It's every single small step that you take, that, whatever experience you're going through, you are influencing people around you. The WomenWILL success path, the first step is embracing your path. So that means accepting and acknowledging who you are, designing your destiny, becoming more self-aware, and through self-discovery, unlocking your vision, your grit, and your resilience. The next step is enhancing your success skills. Thirdly, empowering your team both at work and at home. So that means you can build and you can lead your team, your organization, and your family. And finally, embodying your legacy so that you can make a lasting and powerful impact in the world. And Lorraine, I believe that you are well on this journey. I think it is a path that you are following, and I'm looking forward to see what that looks like for you in the years to come. So thanks everyone who has been watching, commenting. We've got lots of fun comments. So we have people who say that they are so proud of you. More strength and power to the ladies. And so I think there's a lot of celebration. And finally, Lorraine, I love what I'm hearing. So there's a lot of support from the people who have been tuning in and listening. So do feel free to reply some of those comments. And thank you everyone for watching, whether you're on LinkedIn, on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter. Thank you, and see you again in the next session.